What about if you sell it as like a mascot? Hey, we're creating an AI mascot. It is your mascot. It needs to be your friendly Cisco telephone cable. And
Yeah.
people know Tubi. What we can do is that we can launch Tubi as a spokesperson for your brand. As your brand already knows Tubi is charismatic, Tubi is ready to help and very good with people, we already have the voices of what Tubi is. And all we're going to do for Tubi is pretty much manage them using the ability of the AI to give them a little bit more fact-based knowledge or something like that. Like maybe it's a matter of wrapping the idea and not selling it so much as like, hi, I'm selling you a robot for the future.
You're about to hear a conversation between two agency owners who collectively have over 30 years of experience helping brands sell millions of dollars. Enjoy the episode.
Marketing emotion, come here to learn. Marketing emotion, we're the best.
We're going to use that in our intro.
We're gonna have to get a good one. I was gonna talk about Subway. Subway sucks.
See?
I don't know if you heard of this. They sold into like a private. So they have been like a private company for the longest time as a franchise, like owned by the Luca family for like the longest period of time, and then they actually are selling it to a big company, Roar Capital, and it's a big acquisition because it's very interesting how it wasn't like a public firm, like a McDee's or anything else. And then it's also one of those companies that has been like, super, super, super popular, then, kind of slow down the growth, and then super, 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 super popular, and then on the growth, and then all of a sudden they decide to pretty much like, sell all of that, plus the spaces, plus everything that comes with it. So I thought it was very interesting because they have been very successful with some of their marketing exploits. This is like in 2016, the $5 foot long, and it was just kind of like, hey, just trying to make you have a meal within the $10 range, and that was like really like a big thing and a healthier option than the rest. But it was a very, very good way to differentiate themselves. And then having the fact that it was privately owned, it allows them to be able to turn fast on a dime if they wanted to have like a marketing strategy or activate, an advertisement rather than having to go through all the jumps and the hoops that like a McDonald's have to go through. I just wanted to, kind of bring that to the attention because it is the whole goal of a lot of people where they become an entrepreneur, when they becomes like from an entrepreneur business into, well, now that we're bigger and we have people that we report to, it was just really interesting how marketing can change,
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's interesting because it feels like Subway was very clever back in the day with its marketing strategy, because with that whole wave of like, we want to be a little healthier. Remember those early commercials where it was like a big fat guy that lost a lot of weight?
It
was all because of Subway. What's that?
That actually was a bad use of, talking about the goods and the bads. They also did that. They also had that dark time where Gary, their spokesman, which was a regular Joe, came out and he said, hey, I lost all this weight because I was eating something in a regular diet. And then they tried to use him as an example to find out later that he was collecting child pornography and he was holy shit.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
From then they stopped doing, let's get a regular Joe and do the spokesman.
Yeah.
Like the spokesman now for Subway are like somebody, Stephen Curry, which is like a very well-known basketball player that that is super clean. Like there is just like has a good reputation also. So they picked up now more in athletes that are in line with their brand, that are responsible to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a risk, right? That Steph Curry down the line does something he's not supposed to. Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that they sort of rode that wave. I read recently, and I have it here. I was looking for it while you were talking. Check this out. Look,
they also had this is what I said, like to also position themselves into like the healthy portion too. They were like the first. One of the things was like the first fast food restaurant that pretty much took away any coloring from the food.
Yeah,
which was like I mean, now that I think about it, it's like, well, how many other places were putting coloring in their food? But the fact that they made an announcement and they were trying to put that.
Yeah. Cool. And so I subscribed to this newsletter, and we're not getting paid for this. It's called Charter.
Oh yeah, I saw that. They send you.
Yeah.
I'll actually sign up for it too.
Yeah, it's really good. So they send you like graphs. I think it's once a week. I'm not really sure. But they send you things that are like super interesting, right? And just graphically you can see them. And there's a bunch. It's not just this one. There's another one as well. Basically saying how many stores were closing down, how many franchises were closing stores, and Subway was number one with like, I think it was like 200 stores in the last year, like way above its competitors. And it makes sense, right? Like they have such a big footprint, but maybe that $5 strategy wasn't as good, right? Like maybe they're not making enough money.
I mean, we're talking about late years. Like here in the United States, you could sell that, you always had your Wendy's, your McDonald's, your Burger Kings, and Subway enters and they have this healthier option that hasn't even before Chick-fil-A, because Chick-fil-A is still not it's a healthier option, and you can think that, but it is like, no hormone chicken. Like they started with that whole trend. But yeah, like Subway had no real competitor until then. A lot of other restaurants are coming out and say, you know what, like, hey, you can eat here a healthy Acacia bowl. But yeah, but Subway had way too many Subway. Like we left, when I left Venezuela, there was no Subway. I got back there in like 2008, and they were like, 15 Subways within like
half a block.
Yeah.
And it's different, right? It's not the same as a Starbucks or something else where it's just coffee. It's like you can have coffee maybe several times a day. If you have a meeting, you go take it there and the person you can have something else. It feels like Subway is more like it's a one-time thing during the day, maybe spaced out in a couple of days. But Starbucks can have a larger footprint because Starbucks can be every day, several times a day.
Everybody can have coffee anytime of the day. They also have had, with Subway, they also have issues with like, a few years ago, they came up with like, it's not even real bread. And it was just like, how is it not real bread? But they have a format to say that. Their tuna sandwich wasn't made with real tuna. And they started kind of like fixing things that you were like, well, you know what? I think that right now, if I was really looking for a healthier option, I have more options than Subway.
Yeah. And also that's probably hit them a lot, the fact that other competitors have entered, and maybe the whole fat guy losing weight, maybe with like the whole woke movement is no longer, you know what I mean? Like people might think,
yeah, but I think that's like past there. I don't think that right now I think that right now they're probably closing because they saturated themselves. They were like, kind of like the joke of like, there's a Starbucks next to a Starbucks kind of thing. I think that Subway had that was a
for sure. I'm sure that.
But what I feel that is very interesting is that, as you saw in the chart, they have so many stores, and it was all like a family privately owned corporation.
Well, I mean, they're franchising, right? So they franchise it out, and so that's how they're able to expand. I was also thinking that you made me remember that one of the things I wanted to talk about as well was asymmetrical bets in business and marketing. I think there are not enough of those. I don't know if that's your experience as well, but when you bet, say $10 and you can make 10,000 sort of. And the idea, that's an example, right? But the idea is that you make small bets and see if that pans out. And we were talking about Amazon last time, and Amazon has done that repeatedly, right? Like they've invested and they've had lots of failures. Part of what they say is one success pays for 1,000 failures, right? So they had the Kindle Fire phone or whatever it's called, the Fire phone, I think it was. That was a flop. They've had many flops. But then from those experiments, AWS came out of that. And that's probably the biggest business that's driving the bottom line.
Yeah. It's actually supported Amazon. Like Amazon was making money. Yeah. Amazon as a store was not making money. AWS was pretty much what the cash flow supported the whole. Of course, they knew that it was going to be they knew that it was 10 years to get to where we are right now. But yeah.
What sometimes is hard for marketers in like medium to larger corporations is actually taking the time to make those bets. Just because you have to go against the grain, you will likely fail. Your reputation is on the line. There's a lot at stake, right? You can get fired. It really depends on the company culture. But I do think the industry needs a lot more of that, because with digital, there are so many avenues to explore. For example, I think I mentioned this last time or the episode before, but we have this program where we're launching a virtual influencer, right? And a virtual influencer is a fake character. It doesn't exist, etc. Won't have, Steph Curry eventually misbehaves. Like that's a risk. Virtual influencer won't have that risk, right? But that's a bet. Like that's something that is not proven yet. You would need to have really good execution behind it. You have to invest a certain amount of money and see what happens. But it's one of those asymmetrical bets, because if you do that and it goes well, the awareness for the brand, the idea that you're jumping ahead of the competition because they haven't been able to do that yet, or they're not really into that yet, positioning that virtual influencer on TikTok or these different platforms, having that grow, and being sort of in the zeitgeist of the moment. I actually think that makes sense, right? You could invest 3 months later, 4 months later, you might have to shut it down, but you'll get learnings from it. You'll see what the market was, the reaction of the public was. You'll understand where that's headed, versus like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. And then maybe a few years down the line, I'll do it. And I think those asymmetrical bets, should be taken more often, just because with marketing, you never really know, right? Until you know. It's like business, right? Like I'm going to start this new business. I think it's going to go well. I have all these like logical arguments as to why it's going to go well, but you don't really know until you try it. You have no idea.
Do you think it might be, with respect to this particular product, do you think it's going to be like self-driving cars? Gee whiz, that is just too far in advance. Like, even if we were to try to launch it now, it's just not functioning correctly. And this is like, the virtual influencer, I love it because, it represents your brand. It's not going to make you say anything stupid or look anything stupid. It's not going to be pushing Taylor Swift off some flight of stairs or whatever, so you have some safekeeping with that. I think the reason why people might be like maybe to that asymmetrical bet, because I agree with you. I think people need to think, but let's go back to this particular positioning. If you read anything about social media, and social media as is like, you gotta be yourself. You're gonna present yourself as an individual. People want to know that you celebrate people's birthdays and that you have your good days and your bad days, and how do you react when the cheese in your Whopper comes out and it's just melted and it's just bad? They're trying to bring this up. They have this thing about, can the AI do it? And then, to that explanation, you can say, well, this AI maybe is not meant to represent as a human to have these feelings, but what it can do very well is grab your content, express it well, and share it often. Like, you think it might just be one of those that it just might not be the right time for people to understand it, or maybe people fear it. What are your thoughts on that?
It depends on the industry, but I think, for example, there's one called Little Miquela. Have you heard of her?
Actually, yes, I have, but I heard it through you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think she's got like million. I don't know how many. We can check. But I don't know how many millions of followers she has. I think it really. So the way I think brands should go about it is, I think they should build it as a separate entity. I don't think it should be like Little
Miquela by so-and-so. It's just
right. It shouldn't be like it's owned by Coca-Cola. It should be like, look, this is a separate entity. It's going to talk. It's going to do its thing. And then every now and then, like a real influencer, it'll talk about our brand, or it'll say sponsored post, etc. And I think the virtual influencers should have a lot of like editorial independence, so that it can actually produce the volume it needs to produce. So this is one of the things where, as a company, we're pitching to other companies, right? And this is all very new. So we don't have case studies that say, look, we've built these 10 influencers, virtual influencers, and these are the results. This is something new. And so what we're telling them is, look, we'll build it, we'll own it, we'll manage it. It's not a company spokesperson. It's a virtual influencers that's going to position itself in your industry. Right. So let's say you're renewables. We're going to position, the virtual influencer within the renewables energy market. It's going to talk about renewables. It's going to talk about all these different things, but it's not going to mention your brand all the time, because otherwise then it's like,
it's a walking advertisement. It's a walking
right. We don't want that. We want them to be like, we want the virtual influencer, whether male or female, to be like positioned within the industry as a thought leader, as someone who's expressing.
Yeah, like a subject matter expert.
Yeah, sort of like a brand, right?
Content that it's there, and that you have a team behind that pretty much make sure that this content is as legit and as solid as possible.
Yeah. And I think we also sort of require editorial independence because we feel like, well, social media is sort of saturated and some of the channels are saturated. So you need to be able to produce like a large volume of content to actually influence people. It's not like before it was like, I do one post a week, right? This has to be like, 10, 20 posts, maybe a day, or who knows how many, right? So we're talking about large volumes of content, and there's no team on the other side of the client that's going to be able to check all that. Like, it's just not feasible. It's not going to work, right? So we're asking for editorial independence, saying, look, the virtual influencer is not yours. You don't have to worry about, legal problems or whatever, all these repercussions. Virtual influencers get rented out to you specifically, 4 times a month or 10 times a month. It'll either repost something the brand has said, or it'll talk about the product, or it'll mention the service, or within the context of the industry, et cetera. And we're actually thinking B2B, right? We're not thinking just B2C. B2C is, I think, a little easier. You have Little Miquela, you have all these other virtual influencers that, show themselves at the beach, and then they're partying, and they're drinking Coca-Cola, and then they're doing, like, it's just easier to put the product in there. But I think in B2B, like, you need to position the virtual influencer and be very clear to the audience, right? Like, we're not saying this is a virtual influencer, behind closed doors, but we're telling the audience it's a person. No, we're telling everyone, look, I'm a virtual influencer. And with these new tools, Midjourney, 11 Labs, all these different tools, you can actually like build out a virtual character, have the person speak, give a speech, present the news. Like, there's a bunch of things you can do. And I think all these technologies are new, but no one's sort of putting them together to build a virtual influencer that can actually influence an industry.
So there's 2 questions here. The first one is, are you selling the right thing? Because I am feeling that probably the best way to go about it is you build it first and then the rest will come.
Yeah, that's another option. Yeah,
I definitely think that once you have it, once you create it, have it there, have it 3 months, 4 months, make it errors. Maybe not that there's no errors, maybe achieve what it needs to do and just be a part of the ecosystem. Then you can say, hey, you know what? This is a new way to advertise. Give me this, and we will use our advertising outlets, including our artificial influence, which is in renewables. I love the fact that you thought about a specific industry that, you could definitely leverage, for automobiles to people who are looking for solar panels, to all of it. I think it's just a good place to put your AI system to work. So I really like that. And I think that would also be better for you, because it will actually, I think it should be the best option for you, because then it doesn't have responsibilities. Like, hey, I already had committed to this client that also talks about solar panels, but now you want to be part of this. So I think that it has to be like, you know what, first come, first serve. Exclusivity is an option, and then sell that, rather than trying to. Now, if you're looking to, hey, you know what we need is X amount of money to make this happen, I sincerely believe after having this conversation that it is something that we should, and I'm saying we because now I'm jumping on that, but let's pursue a way of like raising that amount of maybe money, maybe of capital to get that achieved. Because this sounds like a product that maybe, again, you're selling it to that client because the client will use it and be a direct thing, but the client is still very nobody gets fired for hiring IBM kind of thing. Maybe somebody might get fired because this is a new thing kind of. So maybe the best thing would be to try and look for other people who would be interested in having their hands on, I love the concept of the influencer. I will invest on that as long as I can get some return on investment on a longer term. I think that might be the best approach to it. Because I think if you sell it, it's revolutionary to sell it to a client.
Yeah, maybe. I think it really depends on how the client wants to go about it. So we've thought about that. And we thought, okay, maybe we need to launch 2 to 3 influencers, different industries, maybe something a little bit broader so it appeals to more people, and then sell like the access to it. Like, that's the traditional sort of route. The other thing is like, if we're pitching a new company and they're actually going to have their own virtual influencer, what we think would be interesting is for them to build it with us from scratch, because then they get to pick the name, the look, the positioning, the platform, the channels, what it's going to say, what it's not going to say, what competitor, what, you know, if it's going to talk about the industry and what angle is it going to talk about the industry. There's a bunch of things that sort of can be tailored to the company itself. And we think there's an actual advantage in it. And then later on, the idea would be like, if it works out, the company's happy, we're working together, awesome. Like if they want to hire us, excellent. You know, but after a certain amount of time, we would actually like transfer the ownership of the virtual influencer to that company and say, okay, look, if you want someone else to manage this, then you can do that. It doesn't have to be us, right? I mean, obviously, if they're happy with us, great. We prefer that. But if they wanted to go in a different direction,
it's like a website,
right?
You develop this product. We developed and all the stuff. If you get to a point that it's like, hey, you can take it or you can figure something out with that.
And we think like it's sort of like building a media company for them, specifically like within their industry. Only it's led by like a virtual influencer that has then a newsletter. It can have its own website. It can do a lot of different things that maybe if you just build a media company and it's just a website and it's just a brand, it's not the same.
So it reminds me of like how a lot of like sports teams or something, they create like a mascot. So which is the mascot, and then all of a sudden they give them a voice, a clever voice, a funny voice, you know, something that just like them, and then they just have like that personality. What I say, I love what you're saying, because it seems this AI, you'll just get getting smarter and smarter and smarter. So eventually, this is right now you are investing on a tool that could be pretty much everything that you need, not just towards the public, but also, as we talked in our last episode, that's something that can give you like us. Hi, and welcome to Cisco. I am Jimmy, your virtual influencer. I can tell you everything about Cisco that you probably
right. And it's not just AI though, right? Like we're actually having a team of people behind the influencer they're actually like, let's put the virtual influencer in this setting. Let's do this. Let's put them in this video. And then there's AI in the sense that we're building an internal bot that learns about the company. So let's say Create 180 hires us. So you give us all the information, not just what's on your website, but like what the products and services and all these different things. We train a bot to understand the business and to know like what if we mention a certain product, it'll know what it's about. And then that that bot gets used by a human. So it's the combination of like the AI plus the human. First of all, it reduces the risk of the AI saying something it shouldn't. But it also adds like a creative element because there's a human in the mix. Remember we talked about this, and this is part of our thesis, right? As to where AI is going is these first few innings is the human plus the machine. And so we're building this internal bot, and that bot gets used to like, okay, can we make a post? Can we talk about this news? You know, this is the context we want to talk about. And it'll know, it'll know about your industry, but it'll also know about your company. And the idea is for the human and the machine to work together to produce the biggest output possible. But it's not like we're turning on an AI and it'll just talk on Twitter nonstop, right? We think that's too dangerous still for brands.
Why? I mean, as an agency, one of the things that we find the most, and again, this is why an agency like me, you know, also it's hard to pick up a really, really, really big client who probably has the means and the ways and the association with this, is that most of the top executives at these places, you know, they live in a very safe, I don't want to say a dinosaur world because it sounds so like cliche-ish, but it's like, they are like, I remember Terminator 2, kind of thing. You're like, you know, they're definitely not, or, I am afraid, like, even when I started working back at the bank, it was very like, well, you know, social media, it's good and people like it. You know, you're going to be doing some tweeting and things like that. Just make sure that you don't give any intellectual knowledge about things via Twitter. And you're like, do you really even know what Twitter is for? Or what do you think? What are you expecting of this? Are you expecting that I am going to grab Twitter and put it to like, hey, you know what? Go come get a credit card today. And people are just going to go and rush into the store and get a credit card today. So it's not like you're completely like oblivious to it. And as you know, as we see when they're trying to create policy for like Facebook and social media here in the United States, I believe that you have right now that tough task of explaining. And again, I think your hypothesis is correct, and it's going to be eventually embraced. But I think that maybe it's not being embraced the way that you're expecting it because you are so much more advanced than those individuals who are ready to take the risk of decision.
And we've had some of that. We've had some of that. There's a lot of curiosity around it, but I think for a lot of people, it's like, oh, that's a big jump, you know. Not sure I want to go there yet.
I just did my first Facebook video last week. You know, now you're telling me to.
Yeah. It depends on the brand, but yeah.
I get that. I think when you said renewables, I think that that's a world that has to be so on top of tech that they're not going to be like, an example, a bank, which is a little bit more of like, you know, it's more traditional, or that they don't know how fast. The other thing too that is very understandable about these executives, you know, not to say like, oh, these executives don't know, like, it's that the way that they do business is still at a pace where, you know, did you send me an email? Did my email was seen by my team? Like, it's very, everything still, communication and everything works at a very much lower base to achieve things. So it's kind of like an example. Let's do a promotion that we involve, you know, other sponsors to be a part of this, you know. Back in 2007, to do this, you had to get your lawyer to create like, you know, some sort of like, this is what we're presenting. And then the official meeting, the shake hands, do we like each other? And you had to go through this whole courtship. Then now the, you know, millennials, Gen Z, you know, they don't really need that. They're like, oh, I get it. You just want to have us to do a sponsorship of this. Just, you know, send me an email with how much it would be. And then we'll just back and forth, or like even people are doing texting. So it's like much faster in the communication. So I think that you are losing a lot into like moving that around with this. You need to find an industry that is really looking forward to saying, you know what, we are not a one-trick pony. We're developing technologies on this spectrum. We need to be a part of this conversation as of now. I think that us investing in this now will pay in 10 years. Back to the Amazon example. You know, we know that this is going to be something that we might just need to fight it and get it done. But I think that your heart and brain is in the right place. Exactly.
Yeah, I think, well, I just think it's just, yeah. I mean, I don't think it even needs to pay out in 10 years. I think it could be a lot sooner. Just because you're if you're one of the first out of the gate, like your virtual influencer will have a bigger impact than if you wait 5 years and then you're like the 101st company that's actually doing this. It's just interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out either. But I do see like, you know, little things that show me like, oh, this could be a thing, you know?
How do you clean it and said something like, hey, this is not a virtual, maybe we need to, let's use marketing for this one. What about if you sell it as like a mascot? Hey, we're creating an AI mascot. This is your mascot. It needs to be your friendly Cisco telephone cable, you know, and people know Tubi. What we can do is that we can launch Tubi as a spokesperson for your brand. As your brand already knows Tubi is charismatic, Tubi is ready to help and very good with people. We already have the voices of what Tubi is. And all we're going to do for Tubi is pretty much manage them through people using the ability of the AI to give them a little bit more fact-based knowledge or something like that. Like maybe it's a matter of wrapping the idea and not selling it so much as like, hi, I'm selling you a robot for the future. No, thank you, functional corner. Like, put a me at this time. You know, come with me to what we live. You know how it is. You don't have to like it. But I think basically probably soften it up and saying, hey, you know what do you like to do? We can do a virtual influencer, which could be your mascot. And what we're doing with your mascot is we're giving it a voice and a personality.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing with that is we thought about that, but the mascot would sort of turns into like a company spokesperson, like the gecko for Geico. That's brilliant. Like, I think, and that gecko can then show up in cartoons. Like, it's so flexible, versus like the Geico brand. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very different in the mind of the consumer. But, and that's an option. Like, we could do that. But the thing with that is, then it's a company spokesperson. Then it's like a new brand they're launching. It's completely tied to them. And there are implications to that, right? Like, you're not as free then. Everything needs to get reviewed. We just feel like there might be companies out there that are like willing to do that and say, look, I'll bet on this. I trust you. Go ahead and, handle the mascot. You're going to be scared of like, oh, wait, that's a separate brand. Not going to do that in-house. Like,
we have a new director of marketing. Does not like the AI mascot. They want to go with, rather than Tubi, they want to go with YouTubi. And it's like, it's just the whole.
But I actually do think for most brands, even B2B, I think either a virtual influencer, I mean, fine, we can do that as well. But even just a mascot is probably a really good idea. They're just so flexible, you can tell stories through them.
I think it would be easier for you to reach an exec with the idea as like, hey, the mascot that you created that people love or seen, or you only have it next to the recycling bins around the office in all your call centers. What about if we give that person a personality, an input, a content, and a concept of selling your brand daily in a better, more instructive way with more knowledge and more personality, rather than saying something like, use us and we recycle, more of like, use us because we recycle, because we understand that recycling has this. Did you know that companies that recycle have happier employees because of this? Like, now you're giving that, hey guys, a little mascot personality, more depth. I think that could be an easier way to reach that. Now, what you're saying, I still get big on. It's like, no, Romulo, like, I don't want to constrict them into that mascot. We can do an AI mascot. That's pretty much what you're telling me. But what you really want is to create, like, if we make these robot, the AI personality, so I can let's take it that, the influencer that really legitimately knows everything that goes well with recycling, we can always use him for whoever wants to be a part of the conversation. And if they really want to showcase, it could be, big company here, big company here, big company here, big company here. They, either pay to be a part of the conversation, which we'll already be talking about it, kind of like a radio show.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we're just getting started with that. I think it's going to be something really interesting to even work on, like, to see what we can come up with.
I love to be. I love to be a part of the whole thing.
Yeah. It sounds like super like sounds exciting to at least us, And so we've already started. We have our own. We called her Olivia. She's got a Twitter account. We're just getting started with like a small experiments here and there. But we'll see where it takes us. I think next year we'll probably double down a little bit more on that.
Put the Olivia handle or whatever it is at the end of that.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that.
I think it's very interesting. Not long ago, I was thinking about 5 years ago. There was this whole conversation about, okay, well, are people going to start doing search vocally rather than text messages, no? So to give you a little bit of story behind this, when I worked in telecommunications with Verizon, so there was this huge leap between people using regular phone to everybody using a mobile phone to everybody using mobile phone to text, and then text, like it took like 15-year gap of everybody using text. Now people are using even more text than phone calling, but like it took this much years to adapt. And then there's also a huge gap about, well, this is when text started happening, and this is where people started using media with text, which was like, hey, I'm in a concert, take a picture and send it, but that technology was already happening. It's just that it took such a long time for people to take on that. So about 4 years ago, in 2019, let's say 2018, one of the things that I was really studying was like, well, so for companies that I'm doing marketing for, when I was doing more of, at that time, it was more focusing in Central Florida companies and locations. So, we were targeting your air conditioning companies, your real estate, roofers, things of that sort. Well, you know what? It's going to be a lot of location based. It's going to be like, well, which is nearest plumber near me? Boom. And then and right now, even Google pretty much kind of gives you priority on that. But what we're thinking is that, you know what? You need to start investing in making sure that you are the one that is the closest to your spot. Because once we move into a vocal search, like, hey, rather than me typing, what is the nearest? Hey, Siri, I need to find out this. You know, Siri is going to turn on. It would give me the best option. But as of this time, it really hasn't been on. And then I have only been in 2 places that I was like, oh my God, well, I guess having to take that. When I use...
I'm not sure I understand.
I know, Siri. I wasn't talking to shoot.
Pretty funny.
But so for example, I use a lot of like, you know, Google to know if it's going to rain, what streets to take, give me a timer, maybe put a song, and that's as fun as I use my virtual assistant. And I think that's what a lot of people have been using. They use them for it. You know, I went to a house and now it's like you get to the house and you're like, hey Alexa, turn on light. Hey Alexa, turn on TV. And that was like, okay, well, this is really cool. A little uncomfortable, but I guess this is probably the future of our kids, you know?
Yeah.
But I do see it. I do see that sometimes it's just a matter of people not being in the same comfort level on the technology that they should probably be at. So back to the conversation that we're having is that we really thought that technology was going to be by now like leaps and bounds.
Which one? The voice?
Me right now telling my computer, hey, computer, turn on Microsoft Word. Okay, I have a letter to say. Dave Isaac, I love your idea of your new virtual, like, and being able to have the computer pretty much write all of that and then, you know, checking all that stuff, rather than me having to use a mouse and stuff. Like, I thought that we were going to be there. And we should probably be there, but there hasn't been a real reason to push this thing on. Or, well, this is what AI is doing.
I think I would give it like 5 more years, because I'm already seeing there's this guy on Twitter. We can put his thing there so people can follow him. He's basically playing with these AIs that have come out, and he's building sort of small software products that he's using internally. And he's basically describing exactly what you're saying. It's all very sort of new, very raw, still not packaged and sold to the masses or anything. But you can just see the edge of that technological shift. And he's saying, like, he's coding, for example. He's saying, okay, I need to code this. He's talking to the machine. It's coding. He's telling it, fix my code, order lunch, you know, and they're called agents. So it's AIs on top of other AIs. And it basically, you can ask the AI to, like, you know, order Domino's pizza, for example. I saw an example like this. And then it says, okay, perfect. It logs on, goes online, finds Domino's.com, knows your address. So it looks for the pizzas, see if there's a discount or not, knows what you like, goes in, orders it, types everything in, address, etc., pays for it, and then tells you the pizza will arrive in, you know, the next 45 minutes, 30 minutes. It's doing all of this, right? It's all very new still, so it's not perfect, but these AI agents are like, that's like the next phase of AI is going to be like that. You're just going to ask for something and it'll show up, or you're going to ask for it to, you know, schedule a call with so-and-so, and, you know, the 2 bots will talk and schedule a meeting at a convenient time, stuff like that. So I would give it 5 more years, but you're right. I also thought we would be here by now, but seeing the progress of the last year in terms of AI, like, that's around the corner.
Is there a voice recognition system that is open to the masses where we can play with this? Because maybe that might be the thing. Again, it's funny because it's like, you know, you have, hey Google, hey Alexa, hey Siri, and I'll just didn't catch it with my accent. Sometimes like, hey Siri, and then it's like, hey Siri, stop.
I think you might have turned mine.
Check if the device is on your home Wi-Fi network.
But I was really thinking that it was going to be more of of a really useful, direct tool. And even if you need those things that they have like kind of worked into, you need to give an address to the AI, and then you can say, hey, blah, 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 I need to get to here. It's still not working at 100%. So people get, very frustrated about that. There was a book, I don't know if it was the Steve Jobs bio or if it was Make It Simple, which is also a book about, how Apple just pretty much makes things very, very, very simple. But the whole concept was, create a phone that only has one button. And then everything else has to be just intuitive, which is probably like the reason why the phone, got so big. And it makes sense because then it's like, you wanted to have grandma be able to grab the phone. You want a kid to grab the iPad and know what to do. That's kind of like the whole goal of it. I think that right now these whole concepts are still on that cusp. I do think that we need to get into. I mean, the more I think about it, the more like creating an AI that just pretty much just becomes the to go to for industry will work. Reason why when I was in China, I met a guy who had done a blog, and I'm telling you, this is like in 2009. Okay, 2008 or 2009. And it was a blog about, they were a big blog into medicine. It was like a medical products and medical, like, new technology medicine. And because they were one of the first ones to come out and hit, they get about like 1 million visitors per month still on this platform at 2009. Because they were like the first ones to go through. And then I did ask him, how do you start monetizing? Because then it's like, okay, do you start at that time? It was pretty much, we partner with some affiliates, and they pretty much fill out our website with affiliate marketing and so on and so forth. So they were able to learn how to monetize it. But even before there was a concept of monetization on that, they were the first ones to like activate. So I think that that's one thing that you could be seeing right now.
Yeah. Well, it's. I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this, but with AI and all these things, like it's important not to turn into our dads. You know what I mean? Or into our moms or dads, because they also had a hard time when the technology shifted, and then we had to teach them how to use email and how to do all these different things and WhatsApp and etc. and the phones and. Sort of like it's hard for them to sort of comprehend those shifts. And it's easy to complain and say, this is going to ruin this, or this is bad because of these reasons. And we should stick to how we've always been doing it. Like the people who said the internet was a fad, right? At the beginning.
Yeah.
It's just bad. Don't worry about it. Like, and super wrong. And I think with AI, it's sort of the same thing. Like we need to understand what these systems are doing. Obviously, no one understands like the black box. There's a black box thing where we're not really sure what it is they're doing. But we have to understand like the principle behind it. Like, okay, it's guessing the next word and phrase, and that's why it sounds logical, etc. But I think we need to understand that, and I think we need to play with this as much as possible because it's going to touch everything. Like we talked about last time, right? It's going to be massive. But what's cool about it though is it's all going to be that natural language. And so I think it's going to be a lot easier for everyone to adapt it, even our parents, because it's no longer, you need to click here, use this, the mouse. It's just going to be like, no, just ask for what you want. And it'll understand. Like, remember I was telling you about the advanced data analysis, the code interpreter from ChatGPT? We're like, I'm not a data analyst, but I'm asking it to do all these things. And I'm just saying it in natural language, and I'm having a conversation with the bot. And it was funny because I caught myself, I think it was before yesterday, I was sending a text to one of our teammates. And the text was basically saying, check my conversation with the bot. Here's the link. It'll give you a better understanding of what I was asking it to do and, what we're trying to do as a company for this specific client. And then I thought like, wow, that's a weird sentence to be writing, right? To say, check my conversation with the bot and you'll understand what it is we need to do with this account, et cetera, right? And I was like, wow, that's the conversation for the future, right? But it's now. I mean, having it now, and ChatGPT launched, very recently. So,
that people are embracing it. And that's the other thing. It's like all ages, which is really cool. I remember I showed ChatGPT to one of my clients that has been doing copy the old school way for the past, 50 something years. And I showed her, and she was like, whoa, like, whoa.
Blown away.
And then immediately she saw it, and then she saw it twice, and she's like, yeah, I love it, but it spits out too robotic. And I'm like, well, that's why you're here. I was kind of like, just see that it can take you to where you need to be, and then here's a tree, now trim the edges kind of thing. Or learn how to do commands so that you can learn how to adapt the tree to the best possible before you start trimming the edges. And then that concept was very simple to get, unlike when you had to tell somebody what T9 was. Remember T9 on your phone that you had to write, and you started guessing your word, and you were just like, but I never wanted to say that. It's like, no, this is a machine that is trying to put together key series of keywords or another word that you have to make it easier for you to text. I hate it. It's like, okay, well, So that was, as you say, this one is easier to embrace because conceptually you grab it much.
Hopefully, Hopefully it'll be a lot easier. And you know what's funny? I think in general, I don't know if a lot of people are like, oh, well, this technology is amazing. Look at all, it's going to take over the world. But it's also like maybe the other way to look at it is saying, wow, maybe our culture and our existence as humans is a lot more mathematical than we thought. Maybe our language and everything we're doing is actually based on math. And that's why these systems are so good at predicting and so good at sounding like us, because in the end, we're also producing math. We're just not conscious of it because we're so, we're not that smart. But maybe it's all, like they've said, right? The language of the universe is math. Maybe, because we are sort of part of that universe and everything, like maybe it's also math. That's why they're so funny.
I told you this last time, but I mean, think fast and slow. It's a great one. And he really talks about that. I think a lot of it's a matter of like living and embracing it rather than saying like, you know what, it's the whole thing about like, well, you can see the cup half full or half empty. Like, yeah, there's so much good things that can come out of this. One thing that I tell my clients about why I love these technologies, because for the first time we have like the perfect, translator for me. And it sounds silly, but it's like, well, I explained that I grew up in Venezuela. I have a little bit of dyslexia. I have, attention, deficit problems and things like that. But it is I'm able to function in society and all that stuff. But what is hard is when you have to write in another language and pretty much express what you're trying to say. And yes, of course, I have encountered people who are excellent writers and editors, and then they can understand everything that I have, not only fixing what I have, what I need to say, but also, enhancing it and beautifying it, which is part of what a good, copywriter and people do. But what this machine does to me is that now, rather than laying it down so thick and hard with a really thick accent to my client or copywriter to understand, it cleans it up to the point that I know that basically I gave them the right concept and the right content of what I wanted to say, then allowing them to modify. So I know that for me, and I think a lot of people who uses, who, for example, English is their second language or whatever second language they could be, it's just such a great tool to probably even things out, in a certain level. Yes, I do understand that, like, now I can put something in ChatGPT, get the reply, give it to my teacher, and my teacher is going to say, like, look, I love what you're trying to say here, but your grammar is horrible. I'm going to have to give you a C in your paper. Now that won't happen, but I think that there's a whole situation with that. But I think it's a great thing because it definitely evens the playing field for like people who are trying to express themselves in a different language or whatsoever.
Yes, it's funny that you mentioned that because in terms of education, it seems like maybe our kids, right, that are 2, 3, 4 years old. It seems to me like the value of college and university and all those things in the future will probably just be the human connections that you can make, and not what you can actually learn there, because
you can probably foment research. I think it's going to be more of an academia thing. It's not going to be like, hi, Romulo, I'm learning how to do business and marketing. It's more of like, hi, I'm Romulo, I'm interested in expanding the concept of research.
Yeah. Well, imagine though, like we have all these bots that you can talk to and you can say, I'm learning French or I'm learning this language. Correct me every time I make a mistake, and you start typing, you start talking, and it's got infinite patience. You can talk all day, corrects everything, like teaches you exactly the different things. Like it's a scale that a lot of people, we've never had. So imagine that. Plus you can look anything up. Plus there's like YouTube and it's so much content.
Knowledge and data. Before it was knowledge and data through an internet. Now it's knowledge and data that is already chewed up for you. You're like, oh, okay.
Right. And for you can say, look, I have dyslexia. Can you explain it like I'm 5 or do this? And, it just keeps. And so they've already been talking about this. Like Bill Gates is talking about this and all these different people. It's like, that's the future of education. So where does college and all these other things stand? And maybe it's just what you're saying. Maybe it's research and we get together, or maybe it's just, coming together and hanging out with different humans and learning from them as well. But the actual like learning, like the person can skip all that if they wanted to.
Yeah, I also very interested because, you can actually have a conversation with ChatGPT. Okay, I need facts. Like, this is not to get political, but if you can say, hey, what are the facts with respect to Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
These are the facts. So then you can actually go into the conversation and say, well, these are the facts. Now, if you choose to believe X, Y, and Z, conspiracy theories or whatever, you can, because this has been published. It's a fact. This is a reality. This is something. Let's talk about this. So there's a lot of good that also can come out of, like, especially things that are not clear, that are not happening, and all the stuff where people interpreting things that cannot happen. It needs help. So
yeah. Anyway, I know you have to go. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a good one, no?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
Great.